Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm going to talk about the King of Cups today and show you the song I chose for this card and my own collage version. I think it is a card that people don't often agree on, so I'm going to show you three quite different representations of the card. And these come probably closest to how I see the King of Cups. But you might see him quite differently. Right, so I think what I'll choose first is this one, which is the closest to the Rider-Waite. This is from the Commonplace Tarot. I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit. There we go. So he is shown there a little bit like the Rider-Waite. He's on his own, he's surrounded by water. You could say he is his own island. He seems a little bit remote and detached from other people, very composed, but there's a hint maybe of loneliness there. So we tend to think, because this is a cups suit, this is dealing with emotions. It is traditionally the King of Cups is seen as connected to the church. That would have been the old kind of meaning of the King of Cups. And he here is almost kind of looks like a monk-like figure, doesn't he? So he could be a spiritual leader. But I suppose from being a leader, you get, in that position, you get kind of people projecting a lot onto you, don't you? But you almost have to keep your distance from them, so you don't get, you get put on a pedestal, I think, sometimes in that position. And you have to be really careful not to abuse that power. And you maybe have to keep your distance from other people's kind of adoration and all the projections they put onto you. And so it's a difficult balancing act. Next one I'll show. This is from, oh, this is a tiny card, I'm sorry. I might have to hold her up if you can see her better. So this is from the Nicoletta Ceccoli tarot deck. I kind of love all the kings in this deck. They all have these creatures coming up from under their dresses, and because it's like, it's mainly a female, I think there's only a couple of male characters in this deck, in her artwork. So, I mean, I think it's important not to think of the court cards as tied to any particular gender. So it's nice to see a female representation of the King of Cups. And so you're not probably going to be able to see this, I don't know if that's focused, but there is a man. So her dress is like the sea, and there is a man who is struggling in the waves on that boat, and there's that dragon there. Now, is she helping him or is she making things worse? I think the guidebook says something like someone who controls their emotions. So I suppose you could see this as her emotions. These are the things she's kind of taking a step back from. But there is also a certain coldness in here that is very different, for example, from the Queen of Cups, sort of nurturing energy. She is watching what's happening, but she's not kind of getting completely involved. It's almost, sometimes on a practical level, I think of King of Cups as someone who's like a counsellor or a therapist. So someone who is there to help you kind of engage with your emotions, but they are not caught up in your emotional drama. Their role is to take a step back and to help you kind of get maybe some objective perspective on what's happening. And then lastly, this might be my favourite one actually. This is from the Dulac Tarot. And it's one of those decks which takes artwork and that wasn't intended for the tarot at all. And lots of these come from kind of fairy tales. And sometimes their choice works and sometimes it doesn't. I suppose it's a bit like my Kate Bush tarot in that sense, isn't it? You're taking something that already exists and trying to put a tarot spin on it. But I particularly like this one. I think it works really well. So this is from, can I zoom in a bit even more? Okay. He's the Mer King from The Little Mermaid, and he's feeding the fish. And I think the idea behind the picture possibly is that he's kind of lonely. He's lost his wife and he's this indulgent father figure. He certainly is that in the Disney version of Little Mermaid, isn't he? And it's almost like his indulgence, his emotion, stops him being as good a ruler as he could be. His emotion interferes. And I suppose that's the point of the King of Cups, is that, I mean, from an elemental point of view, we're talking about fire and water. So fire is like energetic, proactive, creative, and water is more receptive and reflective and about the emotions and the soul. So how do we balance those two things as a ruler? How do we remain in touch with our emotions and also have the slightly kind of ruthless streak that we maybe need to be in a leadership position? And that's I think how I see the King of Cups. I often see him, say him, but it could be a woman of course, but I often see the King of Cups as the older one. So I like the fact that this is an old man in this card. Right, so I'll talk about my song choice. I haven't got another idea for this one. I think I possibly thought of Deeper Understanding from Sensual World, because that is about someone who is feeling a little bit detached from the outside world and feels the need to connect with their emotions. Or I thought also of Pi from it's Ariel, isn't it? And that about a man who is very kind of finding beauty in the numbers and stuff and an emotional connection. But anyway, I've dismissed both those. So this is my choice. Sorry, I'll show you my card and then I'll explain my choice. So this is my card. I will zoom out. And the lyrics here are telling me about the sea, all his love till eternity, which you may have guessed the song already. The painting is by Anthony van Dyck, around 1680 to 1620, when Van Dyck would have been a young man himself, probably in his late teens, early 20s, I think. So this is him looking at old age, which I thought was an interesting perspective, especially as Van Dyck didn't actually live to the grand age himself. He died when he was in his 40s. The boat is from Alfred Wallace. Ship, I think it's called Schooner Under the Moon. And yeah, I've had to add the moon here, but I liked the fact that the moon was almost in his third eye. So kind of that spiritual aspect of this card, that connection with intuition. And you probably guessed what the song is already. Now, this is the cheesy bit. And when I show you this cheesy bit, I will show you what else I thought of doing for this card, which would have been worse. But if I zoom in, you can see in the man's eye, you may think that Kate Bush isn't in this. But of course she is. She is. Here, in the man's pupil, is a picture of Kate Bush sat at the piano when she was a small child. So the song, of course, is Man with a Child in His Eyes. I will quickly show you what I could have done, just in case you think that is very cheesy. I'll show you what I rejected. Right, so I did go through my pictures of Kate Bush. I had this picture from Renoir. And I cut the eyes out, as you can see, and I was going through thinking, oh, does that one of, I think this was the closest one. But that's just, so it's got Kate Bush's eyes and Renoir, but that's just incredibly creepy and unnerving and uncanny. So I rejected that. So you're lucky you're only seeing this image. Now, I just wanted to talk about the song, because I think this raises some interesting things about when we're writing, and I think of my own poetry when I'm writing poems. How much do we know? How much, when someone asks us what our poem or our song is about, as the writer, are we expected to be able to know that, to be able to give a coherent answer? Or is it up to the reader or the listener to come to their own interpretation? So, Kate Bush about this song, and this again comes from Kate Bush Encyclopedia, which go on if you're at all a Kate Bush fan, because it's fantastic. This is what she says. The inspiration for The Man with the Child in His Eyes was just a particular thing that happened when I went to the piano. The piano just started speaking to me. It was a theory that I had for a while, that I just observed in most of the men that I know. The fact that they are just little boys inside, and how wonderful it is that they manage to retain this magic. I myself am attracted to older men, I guess, but I think that's the same with every female. I think it's a very natural basic instinct that you look continually for your father for the rest of your life, as men continually look for their mother in a woman that they meet. I don't think we're all aware of it, but I think it is basically true. You look for that security that the opposite sex in your parenthood gave you as a child. So I think that's a really old interview. I'm not sure if Kate Bush would actually agree with all those sentiments now, and now she's a parent herself. My own personal theory, I don't know what you think about this, is I don't quite, so when she's out giving the impression there that it's about how men are like children inside and they don't really grow up. I do not get this impression from Man with a Child in His Eyes. It's a very melancholic song. There's a lot of longing and sadness in it. Is the man with a child in his eyes even real? He seems like a figment of her imagination. He seems like, and she says she's attracted to older men, but I don't think of the song as her being in a relationship with this man, certainly not a sexual relationship with this man. I think of her as a child, and this is almost a maybe like a mentor or someone she's looking up to. Someone, again, we're in that realm of King of Cups kind of projections, and a lot of it is about how she sees him rather than who he really is. And I think, I mean, it's on the first album, it's on Kicking Side, and I think the actual song would have been written when Kate Bush was probably 16, 17, may have been younger. And I think possibly she doesn't, there is a possibility she doesn't really know herself what this song is about. And I don't think that makes it any less valuable. It makes it up to us and for each of us to have our individual take on it. But what she said in an interview isn't what I get from the song. But as I said, I'd be interested to know what your interpretation of this song has always been and what you think. So that's it for the King of Cups. If you don't subscribe already, please do. And yeah, I look forward to hearing what you think. Bye-bye.